Hey everyone, welcome to Cosmic Alarm Clock. Oh, this is so good. So I'm recording this podcast literally minutes after the full moon in Aquarius in August of 2024. And I just dropped, or I'm about to drop, the mega episode that I recorded a few days ago. And of course I wanted to get off on the full moon because that's how Cosmic Alarm Clock has always been, if you guys have been paying attention. And cosmic time never fails to surprise and delight in its own little way. I thought, you know what, while I'm uploading some new episodes to the new channel, Cosmic Alarm Clock on YouTube, which is going to be the hub for this podcast, and wherever else this essence that has transformed in form in so many ways wants to go, and I'm just the person pressing the buttons here. Wherever it wants to go, we'll let it go. But I decided to upload an episode that never made it to YouTube called Heart versus Hive. And if you guys understand the reference, Heart being Leo and Hive being Aquarius. And I recorded that episode 2 years ago in 2022. And it was a little bit of I think that's when I recorded it. And it was a commentary on social media platforms and this kind of polarity of the creator versus the hive and how we were heading towards tech dystopia. Well, I ended up chopping it up kind of very haphazardly to make it a quick and dirty episode a long time ago. And so it's a little bit choppy, but it's worth a listen because literally everything that I said that's been happening in social media has been felt, and you've seen a huge shift away from creators and social media. And I think we're going to increasingly see that as we enter the age of Aquarius, people looking for alternative ways to really bring their communities offline into private platforms and to really find alternative ways to get their message out. I am looking forward to that myself because social media is the one thing that really stops me from really wanting to play big in this online world because it's just not me. And short form content is not me, but I just thought I would share that. And what was very, very interesting, the episode, which is only about 12 minutes. And even though it's from the past, I think it's worth a listen. Everything that I'm choosing to put up on the YouTube channels, both of this one and the prior YouTube channel, where there's a link in the description of this channel. If you want to listen to any of the prior episodes mentioned, I'm trying to keep it to episodes that stand the test of time. That, like this episode, if you listen 2 years later, it still makes sense. So for now, this is going to be the only episode I upload. I've got a bunch of already edited, uploaded episodes on the prior channel. And I think this kind of is it. I think we're going to start the presses fresh. And I'll be coming back in the fall, right around the time we're about to hit Pluto entering Aquarius after Saturn goes direct. And I didn't plan this, but that is also on a full moon. A Taurus full moon, which feels right. And so you'll hear from me back then. And this whole project is very much this Leo Aquarius polarity. This whole project makes no sense. And I'm just creating a space for me to do whatever I want. And I'm going to allow the form to find itself as it wants without any editing and without any desire of what this is going to be. In this episode, I mentioned how the true kickoff of the Jupiter and Saturn conjunction in December of 2021 was the kind of mouth of the age of Aquarius. Well, I didn't make it up. That I didn't even know I said that. And I'm dropping this podcast on the full moon on Aquarius, the last full moon in Aquarius that we're going to have before Pluto enters Aquarius and we official enter the age of Aquarius, if there was official time. And I am recording this podcast specifically, the one I just dropped, to seed the new channel at the time of the Jupiter-Saturn first quarter square. You cannot make it up, you guys. The timing is insane. So that was the start. This is the next step on the chapter. Remember that Saturn is in Pisces, which is a water sign, and Jupiter is in Gemini, which is an air sign. And remember that Aquarius is an air sign that has a symbol that is the sign of the water bearer. So this is very much how are we doing? So if you're interested in that, check out the podcast I just dropped. And this episode, like I said, is from a couple years ago. Heart versus Hive, worth a listen, especially if you find yourself as a creator or an entrepreneur online. And I think you'll find it interesting to hear this perspective from a couple of years ago. And what's really, really fascinating, at least for me, is how full circle this has come, and that you will hear me mention on the podcast, if you listen to the prior episode, that I was thinking season one, I was kind of wrapping up season one. And I mentioned that season two would be dedicated to Kali. And I was feeling this need for talk more about personal transformation. Well, the essence changed into its own form. And that is my podcast, The Aligned Alchemist, which literally has just launched. I've launched a couple of foundational episodes. Those are all the players. It will eventually be on my other YouTube channel. And that is about personal transformation for entrepreneurs and is specifically for sacral entrepreneurs. And it is all about alchemy and transformation of the path and metamorphosis and personal change and all that. So if that's your jam, definitely check that out, The Aligned Alchemist. And full circle, you guys should know, before I wrap this up, that my first YouTube channel was actually called Cosmic Psyche, and it was collective, it was spiritual alchemy for the collective. And I recorded one video of that, and I recorded it during the Scorpio dark moon in late 2021. And that day, something happened that changed the course of my life, and things were never the same after that. And that channel got put on hold. And then a couple of months later, I started channeling Kali, and that became Success in Spirit in a more business format. And so what got lost in all of that was just me talking on camera about astrology with no real purpose, and just for anybody who wants to hear it. And that is what this full circle, which would make sense on a Aquarian full moon, has happened, and Cosmic Alarm Clock is here. If you are new to joining me on YouTube, welcome. And if you've been a listener on the podcast, thank you so much. I'm not quite sure if it's going to stick around as a podcast, but for now, that's where it's at. It will always be on YouTube, and we'll see how it goes. Thanks for listening. This access of the creator versus the collective. The whole creative community has been facing changes regarding content creation and what the masses want. Low side Aquarius is the hive mind in collective in a negative way. And in any society, you're going to have a polarity, because you can't have everyone being just me. Otherwise you'd have no one going to work. Everyone would have their own YouTube channel. You'd have no audience. And, in the last episode, I talked with, mental health in the age of Aquarius, where I talked with my guest, Judy. We talked a little bit about the effect that Aquarius was having on technology and mental health. But this discussion on Aquarius is more about the effect it's specifically having on kind of content creation and hive mind around content creation. Because this has been personally affecting me and frustrating me for a while, as I'm fairly new to social media and fairly new to content creation. And I'm just like, there was an announcement earlier this week, or just a couple of days ago, from YouTube executives, and they were stating that they're going to now, they don't want to, be the platform that's promoting digital junk food, as they put it. And they want to allow their content creators, and YouTube has historically been longer form content creators, to easily produce shorts from their long form content. Essentially, what they're trying to do is create a situation where the people who watch shorts on their platform are not just watching shorts that are, TikTok videos part 2. I think, they're recognizing the mistakes that Instagram made, where, it's a little surprising that a major company was so uninnovative, but it's just, it's Meta, whatever. And, Instagram attempted to be TikTok part 2. And, frankly, I don't think they're succeeding. I mean, I think they're backpedaling a lot. They just came out with a couple of announcements, a few changes. They're going to make a bunch of changes where they're literally going to become TikTok. There's a lot of backlash from the Kardashians, and they literally had to, all of a sudden stop and change course. And with some, silly announcement from corporate, like, we wanted to innovate, but we moved too fast. I mean, they're not innovating shit. I mean, they're just trying to be TikTok. They're trying to hold on to some younger audience. And now they've come out with something like, we're going to allow, they're promoting photo shorts.
No, sorry, photo reels, whatever. The point is that, short form content is here to stay, and that's not really what the discussion about. It's just the way that these three platforms are kind of playing one another against one another. And specifically with Instagram, Instagram, if you're listening to this, you probably know what I'm talking about. It's just become a platform of people singing and dancing, doing the exact same fucking thing to the same music. And Instagram is further perpetuating this by basically having trending music. So you're encouraged to do trending reels and trending music, and it's just the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard. I talked to another fellow business owner about this, and she's like, "What are we doing?" And I was like, "I don't know. I don't know if anybody stopped. If anybody's just stopped and asked themselves, like, what the hell is this shit?" So that's my own personal opinion, and if people think it's fun and cool, and that's great. But like you could consider that creative. There could be like a dentist or whatever who's trying to promote his dental office, who's getting to sing and dance, and he finds it interesting. But I started a podcast called Cosmic Alarm Clock. I consider myself a Uranian contrarian, and that's just not the kind of content I want to produce as a creator. That doesn't mean it's bad, but it does mean I'm going to talk about the fact that they're promoting everyone doing the same thing. I don't know about that. Why are we doing that? And so Aquarian in its lowest, form is hive mind, it's groupthink, it's doing what the audience wants. And Leo on the low side is just being the rock star, being the performer, and doing only what you want and what nobody else wants. So where people fall on this is really going to depend on their goals. Their goals. If they're a business owner, they have to care more about what the hive mind thinks. If there's a creator who wants to grow and get brand sponsorships or money, they need to care more. And someone doing it for their own joy, or just to be visible and stretch their creativity, that's the highest form of Leo. They can care less, right? So I'm aware of the fact, as I say all this, that these platforms are borrowed. These people did not create Instagram and YouTube and blah blah blah, and they're playing by the rules of the land, and that's fine. But we all know that some of these platforms are just not, they're not equal playing ground. They're actually racist and sexist. And I mean, some examples of that are, we know that, Meta has, which is the parent company of Instagram, we know that they've been under fire for some of their practices with algorithms and things in the past around elections. But in a little bit of time that I've been on Instagram, I've been on Instagram for a year. I'm in my mid 40s. Granted, I'm not the right demographic for Instagram. I went on there because it's very easy to just press the button and go live, and that's how this brand, Success and Spirit, which is a parent company for this, parent brand for this podcast, that's how it was birthed, through just new kind of channeling on Instagram. It wasn't really a conscious decision to use that platform. But as I started getting on there and I started following some fellow content creators and some friends of mine who are people of color, especially when it was an African American person or someone who was Hispanic, literally my entire feed then became African American creators or people who spoke that language. And it crosses the line for me in terms of like, okay, content suggestion, to the point where just like discriminatory behavior. It's very arbitrary who gets put in whose feed. And so, I just think we've crossed the line, and there's the Plutonian dystopia of us all becoming AI and robots and nobody interacting in person anymore. And, that's what Judy and I talked a little bit about in, mental health in the age of Aquarius. This is a little bit of a different discussion. This is, Leo versus Aquarius, and just no one's an actual creator anymore because the platforms are disincentifying anybody who wants to be a creator, and something that people may not be aware of with YouTube is that, click through rate and thumbnails are a really big thing. If you watch anything on YouTube or a YouTube creator, you'll see that people often have these thumbnails where, they're looking like scared, they're looking shocked, their mouth is open, they have like their hand, they look like, oh my God, and the AI, if a woman does that, the AI will trigger that as it's being sexual. So then all of a sudden, I can't make the same thumbnail as another guy would make to get the click through rate. So are we on the same playing field anymore, or what the hell are we doing? This is discriminatory, and it's not creative, and it's not fun. And I mean, maybe I'm just an old fart, but I think all of these TikTok videos are dumb as fuck. And if I hear some of these songs again, I'm going to
Unalive.
kill myself. So I don't know. That's all I had to say about the Leo Aquarius polarity. This has been in play for a while. Mental health issue, and you post your, that was like image crafting, and you're posting your breakfast on the Facebook page and who gets the most likes, and that's not a new concept. But this concept of just the rapid degradation of any form of creativity and Leo is something that I think is kind of new. Leo, the low side of Leo is you have to be adored and loved, and you need those validation for that you value. That's a low side Leo. And all social media is that to an extent, but I think we've reached a place where it's just like, what the hell are we doing? So it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see how these platforms, play against one another. How, it was very interesting to me as someone who's in a business and follows trends, and to see how rapidly YouTube started to distance itself from Instagram after the backlash that Instagram faced. All of a sudden, YouTube was like, "I don't know, we're not that. We're pro long form content. Basically they don't want to have a dumpster fire of just random stupid videos. It's just going to be a lot of stuff's going to be a useless library in a few years, months, it could be." So that's kind of what I just felt called to talk about. I think, where you fit on this axis is, largely going to depend on who's listening to this podcast. And, I would think if you're listening to a podcast called Cosmic Alarm Clock, you lean towards the Leo side, but there's also the lower side, with the Pluto dystopia and tech dystopia. And that's more what, I talked about with my guest in episode 4 or 5, I think it was mental health in the age of Aquarius. My other guest, episode 3, which was dark side of the dark web. That's more of, kind of low side technology, but it all kind of plays together. Kickoff of this kind of age of Aquarius that started with the Saturn and Jupiter conjunction in December of 2020, the first Instagram post. And in my opinion, that was a year that YouTube really became a big thing, because Uranus was also in Aries. And, so Aries is a sign of this is me, and Uranus is change and revolution. So now Uranus is shaking up the financial markets. It's shaking up food supply. It's shaking up cryptocurrency. It's kind of triggered the event in social media. Now the dust is going to fall. Obviously, it's allowed a lot of people to be original and be creators on social media and make a lot of money, and that's great. But I see a lot of dystopia potential with this, Leo being the creator, Aquarius being the hive mind, and Saturn illuminating all of this as we speak. We've been building to a crescendo of all things collective astrology. We started out with talking about the nodes. We talked about the US-Pluto return, tech dystopia, age of Aquarius, Saturn-Uranus square, Saturn-Jupiter conjunction. I mean, frankly, if it happened in astrology in the past 18 months, or it's going to happen in the next year, we've talked about it. I think season 1 is evergreen, and that's in its intention, hoping that people can continue to listen to anytime that they need to get framework of what's going on. I'd like to focus a little bit more on personal transformation and metamorphosis, and have guests. If this season 1 was dedicated to Venus, the intuitive hit I got this past weekend during the full moon energy was that the second season will be dedicated to the dark goddess. You could call it Hecate, Kale, but a little bit a different form of transformation. The South Node being in Scorpio, if the low side of Scorpio is, overly merging with overly being concerned with what others are doing, and the high side of Scorpio is metamorphosis. It's transformation, it's shedding, it's associated with the snake. And so it'll be a little bit more of a focus on how we as individuals can focus on our own personal transformation, metamorphosis, and death and rebirth cycle. I really encourage you guys to go back and listen to the context of all of these events in the greater backdrop of what we're playing in. It's an interesting place in the journey we're finding us the second time that Jupiter is Aries, because Jupiter and Aries kicked off this social media platforms that we're on, and now we're in the round 2 of it, and where we're going to now, it will be interesting